The history of the 1980 United States 1-cent coin. The 1980 United States 1-cent coin, commonly called the 1980 penny, is a small object with a surprisingly rich story. Although it appears ordinary, this coin reflects centuries of American history, economics, politics, art, and technology. The 1980 penny belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognized coin designs in the world. Understanding this coin means exploring the history of the American penny itself, the life of President Abraham Lincoln, the economic conditions of the late 20th century, and the changing methods of coin production in the United States. The official 1-cent coin of the United States in 1980 featured the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. It was produced by the United States Mint, the government agency responsible for making America's coins. Millions of these coins circulated through shops, banks, schools, vending machines, and homes across the country. Origins of the American penny. The history of the American 1-cent coin began long before 1980. The United States introduced its first official cent in 1793, shortly after the country gained independence from Britain. Early cents were much larger than modern pennies and made entirely of copper. These coins symbolize the young nation's desire to establish its own monetary system separate from European powers. Over time, the design and composition of the cent changed many times. Different images appeared on the coin, including Lady Liberty and flying eagles. By the middle of the 19th century, the large copper cent became too expensive and inconvenient. In 1857, the United States adopted the smaller cent size still used today. The modern penny became especially important during industrial growth in America. As businesses expanded and wages increased, small denomination coins were needed for daily transactions. The cent became part of everyday life for Americans of all social classes. Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln cent. The most important historical change in the penny's design came in 1909. That year marked the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. To honor Lincoln, the government replaced the Indian head cent with a new coin featuring Lincoln's portrait. This was historically significant because it was the first regular United States coin to depict a real historical person rather than symbolic imagery. Before 1909, Americans were cautious about placing political leaders on coins because they associated the practice with European monarchies. The Lincoln cent was designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. His portrait of Lincoln became one of the most enduring designs in American history. The image showed Lincoln in profile facing right, with the words, "In God We Trust" above his head, Liberty on the left side, and the year on the right. The reverse side originally displayed 2 wheat stalks surrounding the words 1 cent. These coins are now known as wheat pennies. The Lincoln Memorial reverse. In 1959, the United States celebrated the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. To commemorate the occasion, the reverse design of the penny changed from wheat stalks to the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The new reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo. It showed the famous memorial building with detailed columns and the statue of Lincoln visible between them under magnification. This Lincoln Memorial design appeared on the 1980 penny. Around the memorial were the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, while 1 cent appeared prominently below. For many Americans, this version of the penny became deeply familiar because it remained in circulation for decades. America in 1980. To understand the 1980 penny, it is important to understand the United States during that period. The year 1980 was a time of economic difficulty and political change. Inflation was very high, meaning prices of goods and services were rising rapidly. The country faced unemployment, energy shortages, and uncertainty about the economy. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the price of copper increased significantly. Since pennies were mostly made from copper, producing them became expensive for the government. In some cases, the metal inside the coin was nearly worth as much as the coin's face value. This created concern for the United States Mint. Officials worried that continuing to produce copper pennies would become financially impractical. As a result, the mint began exploring cheaper materials. The 1980 penny was therefore produced during an important transition period in American coinage history. Composition of the 1980 penny. The 1980 1-cent coin was made primarily of copper. Specifically, it consisted of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition had been standard for decades. The coin weighed approximately 3.11 grams and measured 19 millimeters in diameter. It had a smooth edge without ridges. Because copper prices were increasing, the mint eventually changed the composition in 1982 to copper-plated zinc. That means the 1980 penny represents one of the last generations of traditional bronze Lincoln cents. Collectors often distinguish between pre-1982 copper pennies and later zinc pennies because of differences in weight, color, durability, and metal value. Minting locations. The 1980 penny was struck at several mint facilities in the United States. Philadelphia Mint, Denver Mint, San Francisco Mint. Coins from Philadelphia usually carried no mint mark in 1980. Denver coins displayed a small D below the year, while San Francisco proof coins carried an S. Proof coins were specially made for collectors using polished dies and carefully prepared blanks. These coins had mirror-like surfaces and sharper details compared to regular circulation coins. Production numbers. The number of 1980 pennies produced was enormous. Billions entered circulation because pennies were heavily used in everyday commerce. Approximate mintages included Philadelphia, more than 7 billion coins. Denver, more than 5 billion coins. San Francisco proof coins, several million. These high production numbers mean that ordinary 1980 pennies are common today. Most circulated examples are worth only 1 cent unless they possess unusual errors, exceptional condition, or historical significance. Coin collecting and the 1980 penny. Coin collecting, also called numismatics, has long been popular in the United States. Lincoln cents are especially important to collectors because they are affordable and widely available. The 1980 penny often serves as an entry point for beginners learning about coin grading and mint marks. While common examples have little monetary value, collectors still search for uncirculated specimens, proof coins, error coins, coins with unusual coloring or striking defects. Errors may include double strikes, off-center strikes, or die cracks. Rare error coins can sometimes sell for much more than ordinary examples. Professional grading organizations evaluate coins based on preservation and appearance. A perfectly preserved 1980 penny can be worth far more than a worn example, even though both contain the same design. Symbolism of the penny. The penny carries symbolic importance beyond its economic value. For generations, Americans associated pennies with thrift, luck, and charity. Many traditions involve pennies. Some people believe finding a penny on the ground brings good luck, especially if the Lincoln side faces upward. Children often collected pennies in jars, while charities organized penny drives to raise funds. The phrase, "a penny saved is a penny earned," commonly associated with Benjamin Franklin, became part of American culture. Although inflation reduced the purchasing power of the cent over time, the coin remained emotionally significant. By 1980, however, debates had already begun over whether the penny still had practical value. Critics argued that producing pennies cost too much and slowed commercial transactions. Supporters defended the coin as a historic national symbol. Economic challenges and inflation. The late 1970s and early 1980s were marked by severe inflation in the United States. Prices for food, gasoline, and housing increased rapidly. This affected coinage because the cost of raw materials rose sharply. Copper became expensive on world markets, making the production of pennies less economical. The mint studied alternative metals and eventually adopted zinc-coated pennies in 1982. The 1980 penny, therefore, stands near the end of the traditional Bronze era in American coin production. In retrospect, collectors often view these coins as historically important because they represent the final years before a major material transition. The penny in everyday life. In 1980, pennies remained essential for daily commerce. Candy, newspapers, and small household goods often involved prices ending in 1 or 2 cents. Sales taxes also required the use of pennies. Cash transactions dominated American retail activity during this era. Credit cards existed, but were not as universal as today. Digital payment systems did not yet exist in ordinary consumer life. As a result, the penny circulated constantly through grocery stores, schools, arcades, and vending machines. Children used pennies in games and collections, while adults accumulated them in drawers and piggy banks. The penny also appeared in educational activities. Teachers used coins to help children learn arithmetic and American history. Because Lincoln's portrait appeared on the coin, students often connected the penny with lessons about the Civil War and the presidency. Artistic features. Although small, the 1980 penny contains impressive artistic details. Brenner's portrait of Lincoln is widely admired for its realism and dignity. The profile captures Lincoln's thoughtful expression and recognizable features. Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial reverse also demonstrated technical skill. The tiny image included architectural details difficult to achieve on such a small coin. Under magnification, the seated Lincoln statue inside the memorial could actually be seen. This level of detail reflected advances in engraving and minting technology during the 20th century. Transition after 1980. Only 2 years after the 1980 penny was minted, the United States changed the composition of the cent beginning in mid-1982. Most pennies were made from zinc with a thin copper coating. This transition occurred because copper prices continued to rise. The newer zinc pennies were cheaper to produce, but looked similar to older bronze pennies. Collectors today often compare pre-1982 copper cents with later zinc cents. Copper pennies are generally heavier and produce a different sound when dropped. The Lincoln Memorial reverse remained in use until 2008. In 2009, the Mint issued special bicentennial designs honoring Lincoln's life. After that, the reverse changed again to the Union Shield design still used today. Historical importance. The 1980 1-cent coin may appear ordinary, but it represents several important historical themes. The long tradition of American coinage, the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, economic pressures caused by inflation, technological developments in minting, the approaching transition from bronze to zinc coinage. Coins are historical documents made of metal. They reveal what a society values, whom it honors, and how its economy functions. The 1980 penny reflects America during a period of change and uncertainty, while also continuing traditions established decades earlier. Conclusion. The 1980 United States 1-cent coin is more than a simple penny. It is part of a historical journey stretching from the founding of the United States to the modern age. Featuring the image of Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial, it symbolizes national unity, democratic ideals, and historical memory. Produced during a time of economic inflation and rising metal costs, the 1980 penny also marks one of the final years before the United States abandoned traditional bronze composition for cheaper zinc-based coinage. Billions were minted, making it one of the most familiar objects in American daily life. Today, collectors and historians view the 1980 penny as a reminder of an era when physical coins played a central role in commerce and culture. Though its purchasing power has diminished over time, its historical significance remains strong. Small in size but large in meaning, the 1980 American 1-cent coin continues to tell the story of the United States, its people, and its evolving economy.